So let's go right now to CBS News senior national security analyst Fran Townsend. She joins us. She was Homeland Security advisor to President George W. Bush. Fran, good morning to you. Let's start where Jeff's piece ended with the question of ransoms. JBS, we don't know if they paid, but Colonial Pipeline paid nearly $5 million. And in 2020 alone, some $350 million was paid by other companies to clear these ransomware attacks. So simple question, complicated answer. Is it a good idea for companies to pay up?
You know, Tony, we have some experience with this in hostage taking, and we have a national policy that we do not pay ransoms for the release of hostages. We ought to have a similar national policy here. But there need to be exceptions, right? There needs to be discretion. One, these attacks have to be notified very quickly to the federal government. The federal government will have a view as to whether this is an isolated incident or whether this is part of a broader attack. And then, depending on the victim of the attack, there ought to be discretion about whether or not where lives are at stake, not revenue, the ability to pay the ransom.
Yeah, if you pay, it's going to keep happening. I have a question about the technology behind this. Is our cybersecurity itself what's vulnerable, making our systems vulnerable, or are people just making simple mistakes with emails, opening up the wrong link, and in essence letting the bad guys in?
Tony, I think it's a little bit of both, right? Think about here in the United States. We've gone from about 11 billion devices and 7 billion devices in 2011 to now having 25 billion devices. That attack surface, that vulnerability, is just bigger by virtue of our connectedness. That's part of the problem. People do. It's education inside companies about clicking on emails, checking who the sender is before you open an attachment. So there's an education element to this. And then lastly, I would say many of these companies have been much more focused on physical security, a pipeline, the gates and guards around the outside. Meatpacking plants are understandably focused on food security. And so I don't think enough attention or money has been spent on cybersecurity. That's also, for big public companies, Tony, that's a problem because their boards and the management will be held responsible.
Fran, one quick question here about what the White House should do with regard to these attacks. The attackers are believed to be based in Russia. Other attackers have been in China. How aggressive should Washington be in response?
Well, as we know, President Biden has a meeting coming up with Vladimir Putin. He's going to have to raise this. I think President Biden rightly, in his most recent executive order, is calling for a global coalition to hold those nation states who harbor these criminals accountable. That'll mean things like sanctions. I agree with Secretary Panetta. These really become military weapons, but not every deployment by a nation state is an act of war. And so we need a national policy so we understand and consistently approach these problems with our foreign adversaries.
Yeah, we call it a wake-up call. We need to wake up. Fran Townsend, thank you very much. We appreciate it.